welcome to another episode of The Shift with Elena Agar. In this episode, I chat with Steph Gillies. So she is a transition career coach, and career transition coach, and she actually had 32 jobs in 15 years. So I don't know who better yet to talk to about changing jobs and all of that entails than her. So she was really interesting to speak with, and she really brought up some practical points and just shared her own story from, changing all those jobs and then launching her own business. And just, she's had a lot of ups and downs. And I find it fascinating because I think that's what, that's who I want to talk to if I'm changing my career. Like I want to talk to somebody who's been there. And so I very much appreciate the conversation. And I think you will too. So check it out. Steph, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
So let's just go ahead and dive right in, because I don't know who to better speak about transitions in careers than somebody who changed 32 jobs in 15 years. Talk to me about that. How did that all come about?
Yeah. So when I graduated high school, I was given the message from my parents and, those around me that you have to go to university, get a good job, and work for 40 years until you retire. That was the message I got. And so I was like, what do I want to do for 40 years? 40 years sounded like a really long time when I was 19. And I was just like, I had no idea what I wanted to do. So I just tried kind of a little bit of everything. I just got a bunch of jobs. I went to university a few times, and then I finally graduated with a social work degree and, worked in the nonprofit world. And after that, I was laid off during the pandemic. And so I kind of really took some time to actually, look inside and figure out kind of what I wanted out of my career. And that's when I decided to become a career coach, because I had been, I'd helped a lot of people just because they'd asked me for help because I'd done this so many times. Mm-hmm. And so I figured, I might as well, make some money from it. So that's kind of how I got started as a career coach. And yeah, it was a lot of fun. I'm not going to lie. I had a lot of really cool jobs. The one I actually liked the least was working at Starbucks. And the one that I liked the most was I used to guide trail rides on horses. So that was super cool.
That sounds super cool. What did you like the least? Why the least on Starbucks?
The environment and everything was really great, but it just wasn't my style. I didn't like retail work. I hadn't done a lot of retail work in the past. Yeah. And so I didn't enjoy the retail work. And I found the whole Starbucks language really overwhelming to learn. There's a whole language at Starbucks. You really need a degree in a whole nother language there. So
yeah. What was the biggest things you've learned about yourself, I guess, as you went from working for a company and then launching your own thing?
Yeah, I learned a lot. I've learned a lot about myself. I probably know more about myself now than I ever have my whole life. I think the thing, that I learned the most is that I'm capable, right? Because a lot of times I jumped into business and I was terrified. I was super scared, but I was like, you know what? I'll try it and see what happens. And I just really, I did really well in my first year, and I was like, I guess I can do this. Mm-hmm. So that was one of the things, just, helping myself build that confidence. I felt like the first year was really about that confidence building. And then after that, I learned a lot about boundaries, because in the first year I said yes to absolutely everything. Yeah. Right. I mean, most entrepreneurs do. You say yes to everything that comes your way. And then after the first year, I was like, okay, what do I really want to focus on? What do I want to say yes to? And then really being able to put up those boundaries was really helpful, because I'm not typically a person who likes to say no. And so, and then we were talking about before we started recording, is just, being able to have my weekends back and being able to, have some time for rest so that I don't burn myself out completely.
A lot of people are at these crossroads right now, and I'm sure you've been at those plenty of times, kind of trying to figure out what's next, knowing they're not fulfilled by whatever they're doing. And usually I see, so before, historically, I would see a lot of people in kind of mid-30s to early 40s that are hitting that part, because it's they've gotten at a certain level in their career. You're I should know what I want, but I still am not sure. And then they start to wonder. But now I also see a lot of that with younger generations. So it seems like no matter, which generation you come from, everybody's on this journey of what is it that I'm actually trying to do? How does one navigate that? What's helpful?
Yeah, I think the key is, that really is that self-discovery. I feel like had I done that as well when I was younger and not just like job hopped like crazy, I probably would have learned more about myself and I probably would have figured out what I wanted a lot sooner. But, we don't always have that direction of what to do and where to go. And so we just kind of jump from job to job, or we just look for opportunities that we see instead of really thinking about what is it that I want. And so with my clients, that's the first thing we look at is, what do they really want? What do they want out of their career? What do they want out of their life? Some people, they love to try new things and not have to go to a place of work and have a boss. And so being an entrepreneur is great. But other people don't love that, right? They don't want to have to deal with making sure they make enough money every month. And they just want a steady income so that they can do what they want to do on the weekends. And they're just different people, right? So you can't predict what one person, what everyone wants to do. It's really personal. And I think that the key is to really take that time for that introspection. And, sometimes hiring a coach can be really helpful to help you really dig into who that is and what you really want inside. So.
So over your experience, you've coached like over 1,000 people at this stage in your business. And so aside from kind of the exploration, have you seen any themes or similar challenges that people struggle with when it comes to changing?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest theme that I've noticed is that a lot of people tend to just fall into their role, right? Like they're not really looking for this, or they're not really, focused on it. They kind of just fell into it. And then, 10 years later, they're like, oh, now what? Right. So that's like one thing that I've noticed. And then with the change, a lot of people struggle with thinking that they have the skills to make the change. And so just because you don't have the skills in one specific area doesn't mean that you can't move to that area. I've worked with people who've moved from a banking institution to a nonprofit. And there were lots of things that she did on the side where she was, helping at the corporation. She was helping with the mental health awareness, and she was helping with diversity, equity, and inclusion, kind of spearheading some of those things, which typically most people wouldn't put on a resume. But when you're making the change into a nonprofit, that's kind of the stuff they want to see. Right. So really thinking outside the box when it comes to your resume, not just listing, what you've done, but really thinking about what the person who's reading your resume or listening to you in an interview, what do they want to hear about? And those things don't necessarily have to be the things you get paid for.
Earlier you mentioned that, you wish you would have known, or you wish you would have had that guidance, right? And I think, and a lot of people go back to that, but I'm reflecting on my own self, because I not 32 jobs, but I've had about a little bit over 20 jobs in 15 years. And I've changed so many times, and I also didn't know what I wanted to do. So I just kept jumping. But what's interesting is that when I was like with my career counselor, like school and university, or whenever I would do any of those kind of like a personality test, it would always give me these answers of, that I'm like, that I should go into social work, or I should go into like, teaching or nursing. So it was like all about like, because I enjoy working with people. And so none of the jobs that was suggested to me, I liked. I'm like, okay, but that's not what I want to do. And so through those 20 plus jobs, and then probably more at this point now that I'm kind of in a just doing different things, but through all of these experiences, what I've realized is that all those strengths that I had that could have made me really good at like social work can also be applied in business and in the leadership development and in people development, all of that. But I didn't know that unless I would have gone through it. And I think that's what I think a lot of people struggle the most. So I'm curious, like, would you have listened if somebody's like, hey, Steph, you should just go this way? Would you have listened, or would you have been like, no, that doesn't sound, Yeah,
I think it kind of depends. I think like in terms of the coaching side of things, if I was open to it, which like that's a question I don't know if I would have been, but if I was open to it at the time, having someone help me walk through all these questions, because I did feel stuck, I did feel confused, those were the things I did feel. But if I had someone help me walk through those feelings and help me kind of figure out which direction it is, because the same with me, the career counselor in high school was like, okay, what do you want to do? Well, that's unrealistic. What's your plan B? Like that was it, right? Like, and there was, you took the quiz, but totally.
Right.
And you take those, I've taken personality tests like hundreds of times, and I do feel like my answers change based on what stage of life I'm in. And so I really don't feel like they are a super great guidance. I think the best guidance is ourselves, right? Like really looking internally and figuring out who we are and what makes us tick is really what makes the biggest difference. And I think, I know 100% when I was younger, I didn't know who that person was. And I think I'm still learning. I think we always are every day. But I think that the more we get to know ourselves, the more clear the picture becomes of our future. And so had I maybe started this journey a little earlier, maybe I would have had a clearer picture later. But I mean, who's to know? I don't regret anything. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, no, same here. But, you know, because I kind of always reflect back on these. And I think a lot of people are similar. And I talk to a lot of young people and they try to figure it all out. And I'm like, even if somebody were to give you a guidebook today, everybody has their own journey and their own way to getting to things. So like, yeah, I think it would have helped to have some of those discussions, but I think like, it's just the nature of being young. And I of course, there are some exceptions where people are like, you know what, they figure their shit out at like 22 and they're just like full on. But for majority of us, like it just takes, like I always like to say, it's a process and a process takes time. You know, and to your point, like I feel like I kind of started to figure shit out about myself when I was like early 20s, and that's because I went through a divorce, and I was like, well, maybe I should like figure out what I actually want, and like etc. But then like, you know, I'm 37 today, and I'm just like it's not my birthday, but today, like now I'm 37, and you know, and I'm like, I still feel like I'm like, well, I think I got it now, and I still probably gonna feel the same way next year. So like it never stops.
Of course, yeah, for sure. And I think that is probably the difference in mindset from when I was younger to now. Is now I realize it's a journey, and when I was younger, I thought it was a destination, right? I thought like, oh, we're gonna find this thing, and then we're going to be there, and then we're just going to stay there for 40 years, right? Whereas instead, you know, it is a journey that's constantly evolving, and you can change your mind, you can change your job, you can start a business, you can stop a business, you can kind of basically do whatever you want based on where you are at in life and kind of where you want it to take you.
I think it's probably one of the better times in human history to actually do whatever you want to do, with all the access to resources, technology, and just the accessibility, the affordability of starting a business, right? Like you have so many things, like, you know, you got a lot of technology that you can outsource a lot to that versus another human or etc. And then to be able to do this remotely, but then with that comes its own threat, right? Like, so it's like preparing for the future. How do you make sure you maintain your relevance, and what can people do essentially to maintain that relevance in their careers? Can you talk to me a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I mean that's a huge thing for me too, because I spent a lot of time writing resumes, and then ChatGPT comes on the scene, and you know, are resume writers still needed is like a question that people were asking. And I think that the most important thing about it is to really just embrace the technology. Like you're saying, there's so many great things about it, and I actually encourage my clients to use it as part of their, you know, writing the resume, even if that eliminates me from the process, because I do feel like it's just such a great tool. I think that you know, when you're maintaining your relevance, you need to, especially when you're thinking about starting a business in this space, is you need to think about kind of what that direction that the technology and the AI might be taking in the future. You know, content writers might not be as in high demand as they have been. And so you might want to take another approach, like coaching people on what makes great content instead of writing the content for them. Right. So like pivoting to make sure that you're staying relevant with the current technology, and as the technology evolves will be really important. And I think in a career that's valuable as well, but they're always going to need people, right? They're always going to need people to, like, even with resume writing, a lot of people who come to me, it's not that they can't write a great resume, it's that they just don't know what to write. And so I take that time to help them draw that out, pull out their accomplishments by asking them questions, getting to know their background, and, you know, bringing that expertise from the field. And I think that's really what keeps you relevant, is making sure that you are, you know, serving people in a way that, you know, technology just can't.
You know, it's interesting because there's, you know, more senior individuals that are struggling with technology, and then you have the younger generations coming in, they're just like all about utilizing the technology. And it's like, and you know, when you see this organizations, that it almost seems to be this like how to say it, like different challenges. So for the young people, the companies are afraid that they're not going to stay long enough. And then for the older people in organizations, they're like, well, they're not tech savvy enough. So it's very interesting to see these so many different generations in one company, and everybody experiencing their own challenges, because for this younger generation, it's almost like they know too much about technology and not enough about the real life, like the real world of work and business and relationships, right? And poor Gen Zs, everybody picks on them, myself included. I'm trying to be empathetic with them. It's very difficult though. But and I have two sisters that are Gen Zs, so it's very difficult. I live it. And but then you have the older generations that struggle with the opposite. And I'm curious where, where's all that going, in terms of just how we work, and as baby boomers retire and continue to retire, and Gen Zs are kind of coming on the forefront and knowing what they know or what they don't know. What is that world of work going to look like? And do you have any thoughts about the future of work?
Oh, wow. It's a big question.
Yeah,
I think that it's definitely interesting, because when you look at the baby boomers and some of those older generations, they will stay at a job, right? If you hire someone in their 50s or 60s, they're going to stay until retirement. They're not planning to go anywhere. They're not going to job hop. But when you look at people in the younger generations, they're changing jobs every 7 to 8 years. And so that you have someone for a limited amount of time, and then they're going to find another great opportunity somewhere else. What I think this does, it actually requires companies to step up and provide a better working environment, right? Because the more, I think the competition now is more in like having a great organization to work for. I think there's more competition in people finding a great organization than an organization finding great people. I think that the great people are out there, they're everywhere, but the people who are applying are a lot pickier about where they're applying, whether there's work-life balance, what does the time off look like, whether they work remote or in person. Those things are really changing the way that people choose jobs and where they're going to work. And I think that's super interesting. So, I mean, I don't know what the future has to hold, but I do think that companies are going to have to step it up, and they're going to have to provide some really great benefits to their employees in order to keep them.
Yeah. And that, I don't know if you saw the recent, there was a TikTok that went viral, and it was this girl, and she just graduated. Did you see this one? When she graduated recently, she started doing a 9 to 5. And she started crying that she's like, I don't have time. Who has a life? What is this 9 to 5? And she goes through all of that. And then so you have a combination of, and this is really like, like people who are listening, or even just like, people who are like struggling, this is what companies have to deal with. So when you're talking about like career change and like to understand what kind of talent is out there. So on one aspect, you have, as we mentioned, the older generation that are like, listen, we're going to stay there, and we're going to be loyal, and etc. On the flip side, you have the Gen Zs coming on who are crying that they have to work a 9 to 5, right? And then on top of that, you have also Gen Zs coming in. I'm experienced this personally in tech where I work, where they're graduating from universities, 2 years of experience or an internship and university experience only, and they're asking for salaries of 150K plus, right? And so it's like, yes, there's a company should be providing certain things, but it's like, what is the balance? Like, how do you know what I mean? How do you balance out the reality of how much a company can actually pay a person based on what they're actually worth, right? And it's like, it's just very interesting dynamic that, I just feel like, especially in North America, is playing out very strangely, in my opinion.
I mean, I think that there's a limit, obviously. Corporations can't be paying entry-level employees that much, but I mean, I guess it depends on the company. But I think that a lot of those people are just going to be hit with a reality check, right? Of what it actually looks like in the job industry. I mean, I have people who, they look for a job for 3 weeks, and then I have people who look for a job for 8 months. And sometimes they're in the exact same skill set, like there's no difference. It just really depends on, their personality and if they fit with the person who's hiring. And, I've had a few clients in the younger generation who are like, I've been applying for jobs for a week and I haven't got an interview. And I'm like, yeah, that's pretty normal. Like, and so I do think that there's some expectations that will definitely be adjusted based on when they get into the workforce, for sure.
Yeah, there's a lot of assumptions from career change seekers, or just job seekers, about the job market. and the realities of the job market. And it's and that's where that human piece comes in, right? Like to have that to have that conversation, because you can Google, you can look up like, hey, what's the statistics on our job market? But it really gives you very vague information. And unless you talk to an experienced coach like yourself, or somebody who understands the dynamics of what that looks like and how it varies to everybody, it's not an easy place to be in with the job search. I'm curious also to from your opinion. So there's been a lot of talk online about, is it the quantity of applications? Is it the quality of applications? Like, do you have any thoughts on like how, when you're looking for jobs, like, is it focusing on like creating something really great and establishing a relationship, or is it just like hitting a bunch of jobs?
I really think that a diverse job search strategy is the best kind. So a lot of people will just go to applying online because that's the easiest, the lowest hanging fruit. It's the easiest to do. You can apply for 20 jobs in 10 minutes. So people will do that and just keep hitting apply. And then they'll be shocked when they're, not getting responses. And then they'll go back to their resume and they'll be like, what's wrong with my resume? But really, that's not usually the best way to get a job. Right? Your resume is valuable and it's definitely a part of the process, but networking and building relationships is the best way to get a job. The last stat I read was 70% of jobs aren't even posted online and are received through networking or referrals. And so the more you can get out there, I mean, I was just talking to someone yesterday who was like, should I have a LinkedIn profile? Like, I like my job and I'm not looking to change, but my LinkedIn profile is really outdated. So I'm trying to decide what to do. And I was like, absolutely, you should have one, right? Because you just never know when, with all the layoffs that have happened over the past few years, you just never know when your company might be like, oh, well, we decided to make that position obsolete. And then you just also never know what opportunities are out there that you might be missing out on because your profile isn't updated. And that's that competition piece of people leaving every 7 to 8 years is recruiters will just reach out to you. You don't even need to do anything on LinkedIn. Just have a great updated profile and recruiters might reach out to you and offer you a job. And that could be, something you really like, or it might not be. And then, but you get the choice to make that decision. So that can be really helpful for sure.
Yeah. One of the biggest lessons I've learned when I started doing career development kind of work is, and this is like towards like probably like, mid to late 20s. And I think I quickly realized how insecure most people should be about their jobs, no matter how comfortable you think you are about your job, how comfortable, how great of a relationship you have with your manager. At the end of the day, business is business. Business decisions have to be made. You can be at the top of the food chain and you'll still get cut. And I'm sure just as yourself, I've ran into so many people that have gone, that didn't even see it coming and have stayed at that company for 8-10 years and then just been cut and then didn't do any type of networking or relationship outside of the bubble. And then, you know what I'm saying? And a lot of times now the people that they knew are now their competition for a job because they also got laid off. And then it's like, it's not a nice place to be.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. Because I've noticed that the people who are more active on LinkedIn throughout their employment, whether they're looking for a job or not, tend to land on their feet a lot quicker if they're laid off or if something bad happens, or, if they're just, I'm ready for a change, rather than, those who are like, okay, I got laid off. Now I need to update my LinkedIn profile. It takes them a lot longer because they haven't built that network up. People don't know who they are. They haven't been active on LinkedIn. So
yeah, even that brand. How important is the personal brand in your opinion? Because there's also like different, thoughts on that. I'm curious.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really important if you're gonna be in one place and say, you're gonna be looking for this type of job, and then in another place you're saying you're looking for this other type of job. It's gonna be confusing, right? People, I was researching for this course that I'm teaching and said that 86% of hiring managers have chosen not to hire someone based on a Google search. So what is your Google search saying about you, right? Like, what is your online presence saying? If it's all over the place, that's going to be very confusing for people. And they might be like, oh, they're not going to be here for a long term. They won't have longevity. But if you're very clear on your message, you know what you want, and people can Google you and find out that's what you want, and that's pretty consistent, then they're going to be more apt to think you're going to stay for a long time, or that this truly is your goal.
Yeah, very much true. What are you excited for next 6 to 12 months in your business and just in the work that you do?
Yeah, I'm starting a program called Career Story Coaching. And so I'm going to be helping people really figure out that career story, kind of like we were talking about. So digging into what they want out of their life and what really makes them tick, what they're passionate about, and then building a career story around that and building their personal brand around that so that they can really get out there and pursue what they want to pursue. So I'm really excited. I mean, I've done this unofficially, you know, for like 2.5 years. I'm just calling it something now. So
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, putting something together. That's
Yeah,
exciting.
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. And where can people find you? Where do you hang out at online? Where can they find this information?
Yeah, I hang out mostly on LinkedIn. It's just LinkedIn. My name is Steph Gillies, and then my website is stephgillies.com. You can find me in both of those places. I occasionally post on Instagram, but honestly, it's really not the best place to find me.
Yeah, no, LinkedIn is definitely one of my favorite platforms. I still can't get my head around those things. And talking about staying relevant, you know, a lot of people use TikTok. I don't. I only look at links that people send me. But what do you think about that? Because I see, so especially for coaches, because I see a lot of coaches trying to do the TikTok thing and it's just failing miserably. And like, I'm a believer, you're gonna suck at whatever you start. But I feel like certain things you just shouldn't start. Like, it's just not your thing. Like, it's not my thing. I'm like, I would look ridiculous, you know? So it's like, I'm just curious what you think about that.
I think people need to stay true to what they think is best for them. You know, some people like video and they like being on video. I personally don't like video either. I don't even have the TikTok app on my phone. I never downloaded it. I think that I think it really just depends on your personality. I think that you're gonna, like you're saying, it's gonna be awkward for people when they see you if you jump into something that you know isn't right. Right? Sometimes it's still gonna be uncomfortable at the beginning because everything is. But if you jump into something and you're like, I know I don't want to do this. I hate this. I'm never going to like it, but I'll just do it because everyone's doing it and I want to go viral. It's not going to work out. You're not going to go viral. Right. Yeah. So it really needs to be true to you. I mean, I love LinkedIn because I like writing. So text is really great for me. And then I podcast because I think this is fun too, because I enjoy doing that. But yeah, that's like, those are my two mediums. And maybe one day I'll get better at Instagram, but posting pictures every time I post feels like a big commitment. So
yeah, I'm with you there. I struggle with that. I'm like, you know what, I'm just gonna, LinkedIn is where it's at. I'm happy there.
Yeah,
I'm gonna stay there. Unless they come up with something similar, I'm all open for a newer version of LinkedIn. But what is one question you wish people would ask themselves more often?
Yeah, I think that the question people should ask themselves is, what do I really want? I hear a lot of times, you know, even just like around Christmas or holidays, that people are like, oh, well, I don't really like Christmas because I have to do all these things. Well, a few years ago, me and my husband decided that, you know what, we're just going to do whatever we want at Christmas. Last Christmas, we ordered pizza and it was great. We loved it. And we just did our own thing. And so when you really stop taking all those shoulds out of your life, like I should do this, I should do that, and you really focus in on what you want to do and what will make you and your family happy, that's I mean, the best way to do it. So really asking yourself that question instead of just going ahead and doing it because you feel guilty or because you feel like you should do it.
Why do you think it's so hard for people to answer that question? Because it's a hard one to answer for a lot of people.
Yeah, it is. I mean, I think a lot of us, like myself included, are generally not often in touch with that side of us, right? We go about our day, we go to the gym, we go to work, we look after the kids, put them to bed, watch an episode and go to sleep. Like, where in there do you have time to be like, oh, what do I really want today? You know, you're just not making it a priority because you're really busy with your day-to-day life. But when you do take time, even if it's a few minutes in the morning or before you go to bed, just reflecting on, you know, was I my authentic self today? Or did I was today really a representation of what I wanted it to be? Or in the morning, you know, what do I want today to look like? You know, if today was the first day of my life, would I still do what I'm doing today? Right? Like asking yourself those questions, even at just like for 5 minutes a day, can just really help to open that dialogue, that side of you.
Yeah, that's super powerful. Steph, thank you so much for your time, for practical advice. We hope to bring you back again when you are doing some other amazing things in addition to whatever you're keeping you busy today. So thank you for your time again.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.